The Dell XPS 13 has been the most influential laptop design of the past few years, kicking off this craze for thinner and thinner bezels on our laptop displays. So what happens when Dell brings something entirely new, a fresh design for the XPS 13? Well, it's right here, and it's one of the most exciting laptops of 2020 so far. Now, there are a lot of small tweaks Dell brought to the design this year, and we'll get to those. But let's start with the big stuff, the screen. This is a brand new 13.4-inch screen that's in the 16:10 aspect ratio. That means it's a little bit taller and a little bit squarer of a screen. It also means it has kind of a strange screen resolution of 1920 by 1200, but if you're used to MacBooks, this kind of shape should be familiar. For me, it's the right balance of size and portability. Yes, you still get those black bars for videos, but the trade-offs in workflow and productivity are a big win for me. It's a super bright 500 nit display, the colors are really accurate, and the contrast ratio is actually the best I've seen on a laptop that uses a standard LED screen. If you opt for that 4K plus version, this could be a killer little photography laptop. But rather than just add a larger screen to something that's supposed to be small, Dell has actually cut out some of that bottom chin bezel so that the screen sits lower. The overall footprint is still that same small size. And again, smaller bezels are always a good thing. It's hard to explain, but when you sit in front of it and open it up, it really just feels expansive. That extra amount of screen size and that smaller bezel really just makes the screen pop. Now, this philosophy of using the space more efficiently applies beyond just the screen. If you go down to the keyboard, you'll see that this is a larger keyboard and a larger touchpad. Essentially, what Dell has done is stretch the keyboard from edge to edge, made these keycaps a little bit larger and the space in between them a little bit smaller. The result is something that looks kind of like the old 12-inch MacBook that was a really efficient design. I really like this choice that Dell has made here. And fortunately, the keyboard itself, the typing experience, is also really great. Rather than going for the butterfly style mechanism of the XPS 13 2-in-1 or all the old MacBooks, they stuck with the standard 1mm of travel in these key presses, and it's a really, really satisfying keyboard typing experience. It might be my favorite keyboard on a laptop right now. And like I said, the touchpad below is also wider, and they've made the click mechanism a little bit quieter. Just small tweaks, but an overall better laptop experience this year. Now, this edge-to-edge keyboard does have a downside, and that's in port selection. Basically, what you're getting on this new XPS 13 is one less USB-C port than in previous years, and the reason is because they just couldn't find a place to fit it in the actual chassis itself because of how wide that keyboard is. What you do get, though, is a Thunderbolt 3 port on the left side and a Thunderbolt 3 port on the right side. I like that they split these up. That's really nice in terms of convenience. You also, of course, get a headphone jack and a micro SD card slot. And I know taking away one of the USB-C ports can be really frustrating. I feel like this is enough for me, but again, everyone's different here. And when you do look at some of the competition like the HP Spectre X360, they're still including a USB-A port there. So you really need to keep that in mind when you're coming to this XPS 13. Let's talk about performance, because when you're going out and shopping for a laptop, it's really easy just to compare spec sheets and say, oh, this one's more powerful than this one. But really, that's not how real-life performance works. And a great example of that is this new XPS 13, because it's using the same 10th gen Ice Lake Intel processors that a lot of other new laptops are using, but Dell consistently gets more performance out of these same components. The one I've got here is a quad-core Core i7 processor with 16 gigabytes of RAM, so that's kind of at the top end, but of course you can configure it all the way down to a dual-core Core i3. I would be wary of that processor, which starts at $1,000 for that configuration. You are going to be seeing some restrictions in terms of performance and multitasking, but the one I tested here is a super powerful quad-core laptop. In fact, it's the most powerful quad-core laptop I've ever tested. Now, this is interesting because Dell actually released a 6-core Core i7 XPS 13 last year, which had the kind of promise of extra cores, which should bring better performance in content creation specifically. But this year's model is actually only marginally behind that one. It's only 5 or 6% in my test, things like in Handbrake or photo editing, and You know, that's a great sign for this XPS 13 and the components it has inside. But again, Dell's doing extra work there to bring that performance out of those components. Now, I'm not saying you should go out and buy this for a 3D rendering machine or a video editing machine, not at all. You should look towards something like the XPS 15 or some of those bigger laptops with better processors in them. But this one does handle itself pretty well, and I could see it being used as a little portable work machine if you're doing photo editing or some Adobe apps here and there. It could really work for that scenario. Now, of course, these new Ice Lake processors also have better integrated graphics. Intel calls them Iris Plus. The one I have is the highest level, of course, because I have the Core i7. And, you know, this doesn't turn this machine into a gaming laptop by any means. Like, if you try and pull up Fortnite, you can play it. If you bring the settings all the way down to low, it's playable, but honestly, you're gonna get the best frame rates if you lower the resolution, which you don't really wanna do. So yeah, you can play some casual games, you can play some of those esports games if you bring the settings down pretty low. And this can be a nice side thing you can do with this laptop, but again, not a gaming laptop at all. And finally, of course, the XPS 13 gets great battery life. It's a little bit behind the HP Spectre X360, which is kind of the leader in this field in terms of battery life right now, but you're still gonna get beyond a full day of work on a single charge on this. And of course, as I said, there's a bunch of small tweaks Dell has made to the design that I really appreciate as someone who's used XPS for years now. For example, it's finally easy to open. It's just a one-finger open of the lid, and I really appreciate that since a lot of laptops have that right now. And then there's even the IR camera that they put into the top bezel, so you can do Windows Hello and stuff like that. Really appreciate those small tweaks, Dell listening to the criticism it's gotten over the years and actually fixing those little problems. So yeah, this new Dell XPS 13 is better than ever, and that's impressive given the number of changes that Dell has made to the design this year, whether it's the bigger screen, the new keyboard, the fact that they're using more aluminum in the chassis than ever before. All those changes are ones that are better, and they actually add to the kind of quality of life experience of using this laptop on a daily basis. It's hard to believe, but Dell's done it again and made the best laptop you can buy in 2020.